Okay, and for those of you who haven't been here yet, all of the things that we're talking about today and all of the other lessons that we have that are available to use in schools or with community groups and so forth can be found on our webpage, which is energizingyoungvoters.com. And if you go to the webpage, this is the home page, you can get to the lessons either by using the shortcut here, the little apple, which is, educators and community groups, or if you want to read the whole thing, you can scroll down, and educators and community groups is in the center at the bottom. There are things that, especially since we have a number of young people here today, there's a whole page that's devoted to young people, and it includes things like the volunteer opportunities or the paid internship or other things, like we have a woman who teaches you how to take oral histories from individuals. And of course, we're interested in having the oral histories be taken around voting, but that doesn't mean that it has to be. And if you have something going on in your college career or your high school career where knowing how to get people to talk about themselves would be helpful to you, then please let me know and we'll hook you up with the woman. She's a professional oral historian, so it's quite an opportunity. And you can go there and you can look at the other things. The section that is for leagues of women voters is really stuff like, how do you run a school, in-school registration drive, which most of you know. There's some samples for press releases and that sort of thing, which you can find on your own. I'm not going to take a lot of time with that. But if you go to that educators and community groups page, and it always takes me a minute, and you scroll down part way, you'll see the two suites of lessons that we have. One half of them are really devoted to voting and the importance of voting and how do you make decisions and that sort of thing. And the other part, which we worked on yesterday, or we went through yesterday, is called Fighting for Change. And it's about helping young people understand how to determine an issue they really are passionate about, passionate enough to really spend some time on. And how do you then use the democratic system in order to try to bring about the change that you want to see for the world that you're going to be living in for a whole lot longer than we are. And it's important to know those skills as a young person. And you can be effective as a young person. You don't even have to be of voting age yet, and you can do some of the things that the young people are following up on based on their participation in Fighting for the Change activities. Today, we're going to go back to the voting section, and we're going to work or go through specifically the vote by design. And that is really an effort to help people figure out how to make choices about the candidates that they want to elect based on their personal values, not based on what their parents say, not based on what their friends are all thinking about, but what is really part of their core being and what candidates reflect that. So that's what we're going to be working on today. And because I'll tell you one other thing as we move into this, but this is a lesson that was originally developed by Lisa K. Solomon, who is a professor of design, future design at Stanford University. We were in totally different worlds, but she created this lesson as a way to, as a part of her futurist program, to help people look towards the future. I had the chance to see it and through a mutual friend, and I thought that's a piece that's missing in what we already had in place. So I had the opportunity to meet her. She found out what we were doing. I said, is it okay if we use your materials? She said, absolutely, because like us, she wants to get the word out. So her version was a Nearpod version. I found initially that many schools were reluctant to use Nearpod. So again, I asked her permission and we adapted it to a Google version. When we when we got through the first election cycle after adding it to our program, Lisa felt that it was outdated. And I said, I don't think so, because the skills that were being used to help people determine who they wanted as a presidential candidate are no different than the skills that help you choose candidates in other offices. You just need to know a few different things about those offices. And so what I have done in the Google version, I've done two things, and I'm going to ask for your feedback. I'm going to go here. Okay, this is my my files. So initially, when we did vote by design, as I said, it was just a presidential election. When I realized that it was possible to use it in all election cycles, then I created this version, which will take you through the one file has all of the different elections.
Okay.
And you can hide certain slides and then leave clear the ones that you want. So the first section is presidential, the second one is midterm, there's one on gubernatorial elections and so forth. As I was using it to prepare for today, my thought was maybe it would be better if we had it so that instead of having to go through the entire set of slides for everything, that sorry about that. That instead we break it out by election type, so that when you go to the Google version, what you would see is this folder. And then you would pick out whether you wanted to do it for a Board of Education election, local election, Senate and Assembly, like midterm or whatever. I need some feedback. Which do you think is better?
I think the focused is the way you have it in tinier modules, because it's focused.
Okay, so going to a folder instead of directly to the slideshow wouldn't throw you. You would be fine with picking out the correct file.
Well, you know what? Maybe I pull back my comment. Maybe I would like to see the presentation,
okay,
and then be able to evaluate whether the smaller files would be more effective.
Okay, so which way to access it? Does anybody else have a thought before we jump into the actual lesson? The question is, which way would you prefer to access the lesson? Sharon? Unmute yourself, Sharon.
Okay, here it goes. I would be afraid myself that if I accessed the whole thing at once and people got not stuck, but started to talk about one thing, I wouldn't be able to stop it. And so I'm just looking, you look at all these little folders, right? What if we're on both the local elections and people are really excited about the local elections and I don't get to midterms?
Okay, you would not be going through all of the different election cycles in one presentation. You would be picking out the number of slides that would apply to the election that you would be talking about. So it's an extra step on the part of the person who's making the presentation. But Sandy, let me take your comment, and then we're going to do what Fran suggested and just go through the whole thing and then come back to the question.
And it wouldn't throw me off. I also like that it's focused, you know, just off the top of my head, we're talking about a presidential election. There are things you need to think about versus the governor. So without having seen anything, I like the approach.
Okay. The reason that I'm asking it ahead of time is because I thought it would be better to ask it now So that, because that's when you first try to approach it, you would be trying to pick out which way you were going to do it. So, okay, so I'm going to stop that for a second. And, okay, good. If you have thoughts too, you can add them to the chat while you're doing it. For the new folks that are here today, one of the other things that I want to make a point of before we start is that everything that you're going to see today and everything else that is on our website is completely flexible. Please feel free to take small pieces of it. You can take a piece of one thing and a piece of another thing and put them together. You can use them in a classroom. You can use them in a community group. In one case, we had the students from Plainfield took certain slides from Fighting for the Vote, and then the section of the Student Advocate Toolkit, which is tomorrow's lesson, and put them together, and they made 2 community presentations. The kids did it on Zoom, and the first one that they did was right prior to registration, and they were trying to convince people how important it was to vote. So they did one that took some of the Fighting for the Vote slides and then some of the Student Advocate Toolkit that focused specifically on registration. And then they did another one right before Election Day to make sure that people who hadn't voted early or hadn't voted by mail knew it was Election Day and knew where their polling places were and that sort of thing. So feel free to adapt it however you think it is going to work best for you. The one thing that we do ask is that when you make adaptations, anything that you add to it, that you specifically identify as yours. The other thing that we ask is that if you add any images, please make sure that you either have the license for those images or that you check through Google's Creative Commons license to make sure that it is free to use without any kind of penalty. And I'm saying that because we ran into a problem that led to a fine. If we don't do it, if we use something that is not free to use, we are charged for it, even if it is a mistake. So please don't make the mistakes is what I'm asking. Okay. And I will tell you too that this is the first time that I'm using this midterm election version of Vote by Design. So I'm going to be looking for feedback from you as well about things that you think could be changed to make it more effective. But let's get going. This is, and I have unhid certain slides. So in every slideshow, there are some notes to the presenter. And one of the things that I didn't do is that I have to make sure that you can hear video when we're doing it. So I'm going to stop sharing again. And on my screen, when I hit the Start Share button in the lower left-hand corner of the pop-up box, there are 2 check boxes. One is checked and you say share sound, and the other one you check which optimizes for video clips. And then you can go ahead and share, and the people at the other end in their homes will be able to hear and see the video much more clearly. If you don't do that, they can't hear it. So this talks about the ability to adapt it for different versions. So, and the other thing, one more thing, and then we'll get going. I'm going to stick pretty much to the script. There is a script that goes with every single slideshow so that you don't have to dig up all of the factual information yourself and you don't have to figure out what you're going to say. We ask that when you use it, you stick pretty much to the script because we know those work. And if you veer too much from it, like I give the example when we do Fighting for the Vote, one person early on brought in her father's medals from World War II and talked about them to a high school class, which was totally turned off by that. So we know that it works the way we've set it up, so be cautious about what you might add to it. Okay, so How well do you know the job of representatives in Washington, D.C.? Remember, as a voter, what you're really doing is hiring somebody to do a job. So you really should figure out, what are we hiring for? How do you describe it? And what are the main responsibilities? So we're going to have a little fun and take a poll to see where we stand. And then we'll get together and talk about it. Here we go. I'm going to put the link into the chat, and then you can use it yourself. Okay, if you click on that link, it should take you to the Google form that you just saw pop up on my screen. And you can fill it out yourself. I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. Does anyone still need more time? And you can just answer out loud for that. Okay. Then when you're presenting this, you can go to the little pencil that's down at the bottom, and you'll go to the middle one and you'll see the responses to each one of the questions. So what do you notice about how well people in this group think they understand the job of assembly people and senators? Because that's what we're going to be talking about today. What do you notice?
People are pretty confident that they know the jobs that's expected.
Okay, good. And you can see as new people, add, you can see how the graph changes. And then when it comes to, if you're a current voter, do you tend to vote for a candidate based on policy issues or based on the candidate's personal traits? And if you're not yet a voter, then just think in terms of those two categories. So when we take a look at that, that's really interesting. Almost 83% vote on policy, and mostly on the person. There were actually 11%. So that's a good group. And do you have clarity on the previous work experience and the leadership qualities and the personal attributes that are important to you in a candidate? So a couple of you have full clarity, quite a lot, and not a lot of clarity. Okay, we'll see at the end whether your feelings have changed and whether you have more confidence in what's going on. And I see one thing in the slide that I already need to change. You know what? I may have picked the wrong slideshow. I did. Okay, so with kids, we would now say, do you know what you're looking at? And hope that they would come up with the Constitution. All right, so the job description of senators and assembly people can be found in the US Constitution. In Article 2, which states all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which consists of a Senate and a House of Representatives. And that's in Article 1 and Section 1. There are two other branches in the government of the United States. One of those is the executive branch, and it holds the executives or the chief leader. And so at the national level, that's the president and vice president. At the state level, it would be the governor and lieutenant governor and so on down the to municipal and Board of Education. And the other branch is the judicial branch, which we know as the Supreme Court. Having 3 branches of government was the way the authors of the Constitution hoped that would provide some checks and balances so that no one branch would become all powerful. All right. There is a Jamboard down at the bottom. And if you've never used a Jamboard, I think you'll have some fun with it. And if you have, you know you'll have some fun with it. Okay, so what is the senator's or the assembly person's responsibilities and qualifications? So would you grab a sticky note? If you go to the banner on the left, the middle one is the sticky note. Click on that and the note will pop up, and then you can type in whatever you think is a responsibility. You save it, cancel the other one, and then you can move it around. You can expand it. You can change the color.
I just have a black board. I don't have the sticky note thing.
Right, did you put it in the chat? Are you gonna put it in the chat, Pat?
I thought I did.
Nope.
It should.
No, it's
Oh,
not. in the
it's,
chat.
I'm sorry. It just went to Nora for some reason. Hang on. Nora, you are.
You go, Nora.
I'm glad you said something. There you go. Okay, so again, for those people who haven't done it before, down the left-hand side is the is a little banner. The middle one is a sticky note. If you click on that, you get the note pop up. You can type in it and then you save it and it will appear on the board. So what is a senator's or an assembly person's responsibility? Or what qualifications do you know that that person needs? Are you having trouble getting there?
I have to download Jamboard, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm surprised you have to do that. Okay, we have a couple. All right, so one is to listen and learn what's important to their constituents. I'm going to make some of these a little larger because my eyesight isn't that good. Study issues, draft legislation, review it, act on it. Congress makes the laws, qualifications or previous experience. Oh, you people are all so smart. That's one of the lovely things about working with adults. It makes it easy for me. Okay, let's go forward and let's see what the Constitution actually says. So the responsibilities that are listed in the Constitution are some of the things that you've said. So you represent your constituents, so you need to listen to them and you need to inform them about what's going on. You need to draft and pass legislation. You serve on committees and you're assigned to those committees usually based on seniority. So some of the more important ones get people who are longer term members. You also get to approve or reject nominations by the president if you're a senator, and you get to approve or reject treaties with foreign countries. If you're a congressman or assembly person, you are the one who can actually impeach a government official, but the senators are the one who holds impeachment trials. So those are the responsibilities that are listed. The qualifications: for senators, you have to be 30 years old and only 25 if you're an assembly person. You do have to be a citizen, either natural born or naturalized, and there are differences. Again, senators have to be citizens for 9 years and congressmen have to be for 7 years. Article 1, Section 2, Clause 2 says, no person shall be a representative who shall not have attained the age of 25 years and been 7 years a citizen, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of that state which he shall be chosen. And the reference is there. So what do you actually want in your senator or your congressperson? Sorry about that. All right, I'm going to go back to the Jamboard. It's the same Jamboard. And you just move to the right. So now that you know the responsibilities, what I'd like you to do is to talk about the personal qualities. What do you want in an elected official? You want a person who is. So grab a sticky note and let's start adding to that. Can you see that Jamboard? Okay.
Sue, is there a brand new blank Jamboard?
It's a blue background that says, now that you know the job to be done, what do you want
All right,
in an
'cause-
elected official? Are you there or not? You can,
The previous, the
There
previous,
My board is black. I see black. Does anybody
go to-
else?
I have black.
You go to the chat and click on the link that's still there from last time.
Okay.
But when you do, you go to the same Jamboard. So how you said move to the right, how do you move to the right?
if you look up at the top third, you'll see a little board that says 1 of 4, 2 of 4, 3 of 4. So
Ah.
you want to be on 2 of 4.
There we go.
I see it. I'm winning. All right.
Ah, good.
I don't see it at all.
At the top.
All right. I have Jamboard, Google, get the App Store. Oh, I see 1 of 4. Okay, sorry.
No, that's
is-
fine.
2 of 4, huh? Okay. I just,
Yep, 2 of
it's
4.
simple.
No, not when you're first using it. So don't be bad. Don't be hard on yourself. All right. So I'm going to start reading some of them because I've been talking to you. So I don't know what's been said so far. Someone who helps with poverty.
Mhm.
Ooh, now you're popping G. Racial issues and social justice, person who puts the community first rather than his own agenda. The bigger one, someone who's an active listener, understanding, willing to help no matter what, open-minded. Somebody with integrity who listens to constituents. Somebody who's accountable and diligent, able to deal with crises rationally and thoughtfully. Attentive, passionate. Oh, these are all really good ones. Okay, one of the things that I love about using a Jamboard is that these are saved so that I can go back to them and I can see what you've said if there's something that I want to refer to. Okay, so I am going to close this out again. So maybe you chose inspiring, or maybe you chose fair or empathetic or analytical or decisive. But no matter what you chose, identifying what you really value in a leader can help you imagine the types of people you'd like to see in office, and then vote for someone like them instead of what your parents think or your peers think. So you're picking a person that reflects what you want. Okay. Here we go again. Let's try another one. You should come to a form. Oh, mine is too small. But at any rate, it lists a whole bunch of characteristics that are possible to find in individuals, in us as well as other people. So what I'd like you to do is to look at the form and to follow the directions and pick what you personally value most in someone who'd be a senator or an assembly person. And I see something I need to change on that.
Wait, I don't see my form. Damn, let me see the form.
Go back to the chat, and what you
Okay.
should see is
the form.
HTTPS/forms.
Got it.
Okay.
Pick 3.
I know when I did this for the first time, it really forced me to concentrate on the things that were truly the most important to me. There were so many that were important, but when I had to narrow it down, it was hard. We're getting there. A few more people.
Oh my God.
Sharon, you know that you are not unmuted. I mean, that you're not muted.
Oh, sorry. So far, I just want a pet owner, you know? Sorry, I'll do that.
That's okay.
Oh. Hmm.
Okay, another minute and then we'll look at the results. Okay, if you're not finished, you can continue, but let's look at the way the graph shows up this time. All right, so in terms of previous experience, it looks like what wins here is community service. And then equally important, governing experience, legislative experience, community organizing, academic excellence, domestic experience. And then the things that aren't quite so important would be executive experience and international and independence of thought and leadership experience. That's interesting. What's interesting to me about it is that when we've done the presidential elections, there are different qualities that show up as first, second, and third. So that reflects the fact that it is a different job. And so I'm very happy to see that. Okay, leadership qualities. So ambitious. And let's see, the one that beats everything else is empathetic and integrity. I like those. Those would be mine too. Somebody who's fair, that's important. Somebody who's visionary and decisive. All good qualities. And then personal attributes. Wow, look at that. Isn't that interesting? It really stands out that you're healthy and successful and young. Love it. But every one of them is important to somebody. So that is, I think, also instructive, because when we realize that there are other things that truly are important to individual people, we realize where some of the dissatisfaction comes from when we elect one candidate over another. Okay, so when we frame our choice of a candidate around those leadership qualities and not around the specific candidates, efforts to appeal to people, we might end up with a different view of what matters. And I'll give you a personal insight. When I went through this lesson the first time, I actually wound up picking a different person who had debated in the primaries than I wanted as the actual nominee. So this identifying leadership qualities was valuable to me, even feeling like I know a whole lot. So the leadership criteria worksheet is what we just did. So what we're going to do now is break you out into groups. And when you're in the group, what I want you to try to do is to think about what you personally valued in a leader and to listen to what the other people in the group also did. And then I want you to try to come up with a negotiated leader that you could all live with, even if it's not your perfect leader. So you can't say, we want all those characteristics. You're going to have to give me a snapshot of a little leader, and then choose a spokesperson and be ready to read aloud your reader's bio when we come back. You will have about 5 minutes to do this with. So do you understand the task when you get into the rooms? Anybody need clarification?
Will those instructions be in the room when we get there?
I can do that. I think I'll put it in the chat, and let me do that now.
Thanks.
No, you won't be able to see this chat when we get in there, will you? Let me do it. Whoops. I'm going to have to do it a different way.
Should we just write them down? And then
You can. All right. So essentially what you're going to try to do is share with other people what you think is the perfect leader and negotiate with one another to come up with a snapshot, like a brief bio of a leader you can all live with. Because we know that when we look at the candidates that are running for office, they will never be our perfect leader. We are going to have to make some adjustments and some accommodations in our personal values in order to pick the person that will do the job the best. Does that help? Does that make it clearer?
Is this for Congress or just in
Yes.
general leader?
This
Congress.
is for Congress, right? Okay, so you're going to be in rooms with 4 people in them. So we've got almost 20. Okay, if you would join one of your rooms. Crystal, are you having trouble joining? welcome back.
Bye.
Okay, would the spokesperson for room 1 be good enough to read your biography of your perfect leader? Or your collaborative leader, I should say, not perfect.
I guess I'll do that. So
Thanks.
we came up with a bullet list of characteristics that we determined as valuable and important. We want the candidate to be empathetic. They must have integrity in how they speak and how they behave. We want them to be lawful and cognizant of what guidelines are and expectations. We want to feel confident that what they're talking about during the election period is actually what they're going to vote for. Or are they just kind of pulling us along in their baloney? We want to also see a candidate that we're confident will get along with their other colleagues so that they're going to be able to compromise and find common ground. It's not just their way or the highway. They have to be good listeners and be able to talk to the other Congress people. We want to make sure that these individuals clearly know what their job role is. Can they define what their responsibilities will be? Do they know how things work and what the processes are that they're going to be walking into in this new position that they're taking? Do we feel as though they have the persona that they are a servant, they are a representative, or are they seeking this position because they want to be a honcho or a star? Sometimes you can see that personality trait in people. So, but most importantly, will they serve the needs of their constituency? That's it.
Thanks, Fran. Who was the spokesperson for room 2?
I was the secretary for room 2, and I'll be happy to read our list.
Good. Go ahead,
Someone who's understanding, someone who represents, a person who represents the community and not the party and acts accordingly, country and community over party. Personal integrity, empathetic, educated, for example, in that they're thoughtful about the words they use. We like more diverse candidates that represent our diverse community and backgrounds in multiple ways. Able to think on their feet, someone who's a good communicator, someone who's good in a crisis, who's calm, responsive, and can make decisions in a level-headed way. A member or part of the community and not someone who places themselves above the community, who shows humility and is not ego-filled. And finally, approachable.
Great. Room 3.
I don't think we chose a spokesperson, but I've got a list. Is that okay with you too?
That's
That's
fine.
perfect. I was thinking the same thing. We ran out of time.
Yeah, we have a
Thank
lot
you,
we expect
Jan.
of a person. Okay. So we want somebody with some community organizer skills and experience, someone acquainted with the leadership role, who knows how to compromise to get things done, a conflict resolver who's got that skill set, someone with some financial experience handling fiscal issues, a budget manager, that kind of thing. A creative person who comes up with new ideas and solutions, maybe to some old problems. We want constitution and constituents ahead of money and other interests. And that implies integrity. And we want to know that they are going to put community over money.
Thank you. Room 4?
Well, we ran out of time too, and I was taking notes, so I'm just gonna go ahead and everybody's got these great suggestions that we would probably have used too, but our most consistent issues that were raised were listening, communication, being concerned and empathetic, having the analytic and research skills to solve problems. But it stands up to the party, which has been one of the common themes, and is from the community and reflects and knows his or her constituency.
Thank you. And how about room 5?
I took the notes, but does anybody else want to report out? Okay, all right.
Go ahead, Bonnie.
So a successful community and relationship builder who is empathetic to their constituents' needs. They have the ability to analyze issues and they're confident in their ability to execute policy. And they have a demonstrated history of honesty, integrity, and humility.
Great, thank you. Are any of the others of you willing to share some information about what the process was like when you got into that group? How did you start? How did you come to the decisions that you came to?
Well, I'll open it up.
Okay,
We started by talking about our situations with the people that are representing us. And it ranged from good to bad. And then we just, when we saw the timer say 28 seconds, we decided that was time to get our act together.
and to me, it seems like 5 minutes is plenty, but I recognize when you're in a group and working, it goes really fast.
It does. Does anybody from group 4 have anything to add?
And for many of the groups, really.
I'll speak. Our
Okay,
group
go.
just went around the room and we all took a turn putting out something we felt was important, and we just kept going round and round like that, and it worked great, and we were frankly all in total agreement with everything everybody was saying. So we were very like-minded.
Lucky you. Anyone else? Maybe one more person.
Well, we seem to have a lot of, I don't know if we had, without exploring it, shared experience, but we found it pretty easy, I think, to know what we want, probably because we've seen what we don't want plenty. So we didn't have any conflict or anything like that. We seem to be on the same page.
Good. It is interesting that the decisions that I've made personally, I think are too often were too often reflective and reactive. So that whatever was going on in the world right then was what I didn't want or did want, depending on what I saw as the outcome of the actions or the personality characteristics of the elected official. So again, this particular activity helped me open my eyes to the fact that I probably should think and try to separate that from those qualities that I really care about, instead of just reacting. So I don't know if you felt the same way as you were going through it or not, but that's just a personal reaction. What you're going to do now is you're going to watch 4 video clips. 2 of them are Republicans and 2 of them are Democrats. All of them were presidential hopefuls. So there are 2 people from the 2016 presidential race or primary race, and 2 from the 2020 primary race. So it's not everybody. But what I will ask you to do while you're watching these, now that you have in mind what is really most important to you in a candidate, out of the 4 that are there, I'd like you to try to decide who comes closest to that ideal candidate that your group just came up with. Okay, is that clear?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's have some fun. All right, so this is what some of what you're going to be noticing. How do they present those leadership qualities through their words? And you also want to watch body language. Okay, so the first one is Jeb Bush. You'll have a couple of seconds between them to make notes for yourself if you want.
Thank you all very much. The next president is going to be confronted with an unforeseen challenge. That's almost certain. It could be a pandemic, a major natural disaster, or an attack on our country. The question for South Carolinians and Americans is, who do you want to have sitting behind the big desk in the Oval Office? Because that's the question. It's not the things that we're talking about today. It's the great challenge that may happen. I believe I will have a steady hand as Commander-in-Chief and President of the United States. I will unite this country around common purposes, because I did it as governor of the state of Florida. When I was governor, we had 8 hurricanes and 4 tropical storms in 16 months. Our state was on its back. We recovered far faster than what people thought because we led. We ran to the challenge rather than cutting and running. That's what we need in Washington, D.C. We need someone with a servant's heart that has a backbone, that isn't going to focus on polls and focus groups, is going to focus on the American people to keep them safe and secure. I ask for your vote next Saturday. Thank you all very much. The next president.
So take a few seconds and think back to what you said and decide how he compares to those qualities that you value.
Do we put it in our chat?
No, you can just make a note for yourself. Okay, John Kasich is next.
Well, I want to thank the people of South Carolina. You've been fantastic. And look, what I want you to know is I'm going to send a lot of power, money, and influence back to where we all live. But as I've traveled around South Carolina, I've noticed something. You know, it's that people have a sense that you're not going to wait on a president. You know, when I was a kid, we didn't wait on presidents to come to that little blue-collar town and fix things. You know, the Lord made all of us special. The Lord wants us to be connected. I believe we're part of a very big mosaic. And I'll send the power back. And whoever gets elected president here, hopefully we'll take care of the issue of jobs and wages and Social Security and the border. But the spirit of America rests in all of us. It's in our guts. It's taking care of our children. It's taking care of the lady next door who just lost her husband. It's fixing the schools where we live and telling kids to stay off of drugs. You see, I think what the Lord wants is for us to engage. And in America, the spirit of America doesn't come from the top down. The spirit of America rests in us. And I want to call on everyone in America to double down and realize that you were made special to heal this country and lift it for everyone. Thank you all very much, and I hope I can have your vote in South Carolina.
Okay, again, a couple of minutes. How does that person compare to your ideal? Okay, the next one is Elizabeth Warren.
I was born and raised in Oklahoma, but I'm sure glad to be in Texas tonight. All 3 of my brothers served in military bases here in Texas. That was their ticket to the middle class. Me, I got my big opportunity about a half mile down the road from here at the University of Houston, back when it cost $50 a semester. For a price that I could pay for on a part-time waitressing job, I got to finish my 4-year degree and I became a special needs teacher. And after law school, my first big job was back here in Houston. By then, I had 2 little kids. And when childcare nearly brought me down, my Aunt Bee moved in and saved us all. The paths to America's middle class have gotten a lot smaller and a lot narrower. Today, service members are preyed upon by predatory lenders. Students are crushed by debt and families cannot afford childcare. I know what's broken. I know how to fix it, and I'm going to lead the fight to get it done.
Make some notes for yourself. And then Andrew Yang. Maybe. Let's try this.
In America today, everything revolves around the almighty dollar. Our schools, our hospitals, our media, even our government. It's why we don't trust our institutions anymore. We have to get our country working for us again instead of the other way around. We have to see ourselves as the owners and shareholders of this democracy rather than inputs into a giant machine. When you donate money to a presidential campaign, what happens? The politician spends the money on TV ads and consultants, and you hope it works out. It's time to trust ourselves more than our politicians. That's why I'm going to do something unprecedented tonight. My campaign will now give a freedom dividend of $1,000 a month for an entire year to 10 American families, someone watching this at home right now. If you believe that you can solve your own problems better than any politician, go to yang2020.com and tell us how $1,000 a month will help you do just that. This is how we will get our country working for us again, the American people.
Okay, another couple of seconds. Okay, I'd like some reactions from you. Curious to know how your look at these people from the leadership qualities you identified for yourself impacted who that person appeared to be when you saw them in the video clip now, either 8 or what, 4, 6, 8 or 12 years ago, 8 or, yeah. Sharon.
Okay. Jeb Bush did not have a single new or independent idea, which is something I would want in a candidate. So I'm trying to take away my own bias. And I would expect him on a thing to have said something that would have been, this is what I'm going to do. And he didn't. All right. To me, Kasich, or whatever the heck is, I thought he had no independence from his party, because when he ran, they were into the, you can do this all by yourself. We don't have to help you. Government doesn't have to help you. And my personal belief, there was way too much Lord in there. I don't do that. Warren is she hit everything I really want because she was empathetic. She was educated. She could communicate, and she had a platform that was pragmatic and said, we could do this particular thing. We could do this particular thing. And Yang, I just thought of him as he had no government experience. And he's relying on his money. I understand he's rich, but you just can't throw money at him, which I believe is what he did.
Thank you, Sharon. Jean?
I was most impressed by, of the 4 of them, by Jeb Bush and Elizabeth Warren, because they both talked about their background, what they've done in the past, what they intend to address. And I would, they came across with integrity,
with good communication skills, with some of the other qualities that I indicated were important to me. And I thought, and I didn't pay any attention to any of the chyrons, the screen crawl at the bottom of the screen or anything like that. I simply listened with my ears, and it really enhanced the experience for me. And that's something I'm going to do in the future.
Thank you. Ashanti?
For me, I would say that going through all of them, Jeb Bush seemed almost like he was bragging about how well he handled the past situations from Florida. And that's not really something that I want. Of course, I want someone that can handle situations well, but once you handle that situation well, I don't want to hear about, you know, how great of a job you think you did. For Kasich, once he started saying, you know, Lord, I do believe in separation of church and state. And once you start saying that, I feel like you cut out a lot of people, because America is not just Christian. You have people who are Jewish and Muslim and atheists. And once you start putting God into everything, then a lot of those people feel like the government is no longer doing anything for them. For Elizabeth Warren, I liked how she talked about her own circumstance, but she was able to relate that to several different parts, you know, talking about what it's like to get an education in this day and age versus what it was like years ago, talking about how we need to help military members, because I know military is a big thing always for the government, but they're always talking about it in terms of funding the military. But what about the active service members who need help and the past service members who need help, which is something that is near and dear to me. And then for Andrew Yang, when he talked about, you know, giving people money and that would solve their problems, I don't think that you can just give people money to solve their problems, because a lot of the issues that people are facing today are systematic issues. So it's not a matter of just giving people $1,000 a month and it's solving everything. It's a matter of getting elected officials who need to work the system in a way that benefits the people.
Thank you. I would like to ask you a question, and you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. You know, you may if you wish, but out of those 4 people, based on your personal values, which one would you have chosen if you had to choose one of those 4? Just think about it. If you want to answer, you can, but I won't press you. Carol, how about you?
Well, it's funny. I appreciated Sharon's comments. I kind of came out a lot on that side, but just a few kind of interesting notes. Out of those 4, I came out feeling much better about Elizabeth Warren than I had during that campaign, because of the 4, as was mentioned, she showed them empathy. Okay, I know I've been where, I know what you're going through, and I know how to fix it. Very appealing message. But there were other things I wasn't so happy with back in the day. I had a better overall impression of John Kasich back then, and it may have been because he was the best of a degrading bunch at that time. And I appreciated that he seemed very anxious. By compare, but depending on who, you know, was the other party would have selected, you know, he might have been better than them too. You never know. But anyway, the thing that this particular clip highlighted for me is he's basically saying, well, the Lord helps those who help themselves, kind of in a way, or yet you know, communities stick together, which is all well, and you know, not everybody has that kind of community and a lot of understanding about how life really is in some places, or for some folks in some circumstances. So it's kind of a lack of empathy there, if you will, that this highlighted for me.
Good. Anyone else?
I was surprisingly impressed by Jeb Bush. But what absolutely astonished me, he said an important point. He said, you don't know what's going to happen. And look at Russia and the Ukraine. So essentially a president has to be able to handle anything. He mentioned a pandemic. This was 2016.
Yes.
So I don't know how he knew that, but I just couldn't believe that he said that. So I'm looking at it from the perspective of now versus then, but I like what he said about you've got to be prepared for anything.
Okay, anybody else? Well, thank you all for commenting on that. I hope that you found that a valuable little exercise and that it will make you look at debates, candidate debates a little bit differently than you did maybe the last time there was a round. So now what you're going to do, you're going to go back into groups and you're going to have 15 minutes this time. So you can go, but it's not going to be easy. In that 15 minutes, what I'm going to do now is share a couple of scenarios with you of crises that could arise over the next 2 years, which is the minimum that you would be looking at for a senator or an assembly's elected period, the period they'd be serving in office. These simulations or these crises were actually developed by kids as things that they felt were crucial and would affect their lives into the future. When you're in your group, your job is going to be first to pick the one out of the 4 scenarios that you want to work on. So you have to do that pretty quickly. The second thing you have to do is to remind yourself of what the perfect candidate would be like. And remember, you may not be in the same group you were in before. So you may need to do a little negotiating again. So you've got your scenario and you've got your perfect candidate. What I want you to do is to write the first couple of sentences of a press release that will demonstrate to the electorate that you have actually carried out your promises and you will make them survive whatever this is, that you will make it possible to live through it and come out the other side into a better world. Okay, so a couple of minutes to first choose the scenario, a couple of minutes to get back into the head of this candidate who may not be the perfect one, but close enough to perfect that you voted for them. And then you have to realize that you've only been in office for about 9 months. So this is going to be crucial for you. This message is the first time you've had to deal with a major challenge. So any questions? All right, then I'm going to show you the scenarios. Okay, so the first one is that the water in your city has become undrinkable because of a devastating infrastructure compromise. It's affected wide areas of your state, including several large cities, but it's also affected rural areas, and so wildlife is also affected. The second one is that despite safety protocols, a young person has entered a local Walmart and using his AR-15, he has fired indiscriminately, killing and wounding many in your town. The third one is that the nation has nearly reached herd immunity when yet another new variant emerges. And I can't believe the kids came up with this before the actual Omicron thing. It is not only more easily transmitted, but this one is also more deadly. The current vaccines and herd immunity are not protective. And fourth, as been happening in many other states, wildfire has now erupted for the very first time and is threatening people and homes and wildlife near where you are living. Okay, so you're going to choose one of the 4 scenarios and create the opening lines of your press release. Before you come back into the group, when you get the warning that you've only got 1 minute, make sure you have a press secretary who will read it to the larger group when we return. Okay. Whoops, where's my groups? Stop sharing. Breakout rooms. Oh, you may, I think I can put you in the same rooms. So that will save you some time. Okay. There you go. Jan, are you having trouble?
I was by myself in my room and then leave break room came up. I think I only had 2 people with me before and
Okay.
I think they both left. I don't know.
All right, let me see if I can put you into room
Oh,
1.
I already wrote my stuff.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I did it by myself.
Are you interested in hearing the conversation someplace else or no?
No, well, that's fine. We can, it's probably, the time's almost up, isn't it?
You still have about 7 minutes.
Oh, really? We're getting a lot more. Sure, I'll listen to somebody else.
Okay, I'm going to move you to a room that has just 2 people in it. So you'll be in room 1.
Okay.
I think.
15 minutes was like a flash.
I know it, isn't it?
I was like, where are they going? Oh my, okay, oh my God.
Okay, all right, so now I'm anxious to hear what the crisis was, and then to have the press secretary actually make all of us feel like you've got this. You are the person that I'm so glad I elected. So how about room one? That was what I put Jan in at the last minute. Who's the
Are
press
they back yet, or did they just run away?
I don't know. I think they ran away.
Okay. See, that's what happens when you put me in another group.
Okay. Are you the spokesperson for the room one?
No, Sandy is. Oh, there she is.
Okay.
There she is. She's there.
She's hiding now.
Okay, Sandy, give us the crisis and then tell us that we did the right thing when we elected your ideal leader.
We did the Walmart shooting. And that felt very much like it could happen. We wanted to identify the person, so we said the governor is going to talk to us. We said that it's over, the shooter's dead, so we're not dealing with the hostage situation. This is all very relevant. And the police are the ones who, the first responders, the police had to take action. You don't expect the governor to drive there in an assault vehicle and stop this shooter. So what would the governor say? And I'm also taking it from the context, I live in New Jersey. We have a governor who has taken a lot of action in his first term on gun control. So I'm just throwing this out there that my press release would be something like, people of New Jersey, this is a horrible crisis. We need to address this. And I pledge to you to continue working with the legislature to tighten gun control in our state to prevent a tragedy like that. And I think it's perfectly okay for the governor to mention if he has signed anything into law. I mean, he's only been there 9 months. Murphy had a whole term and he did act on it. But this guy's only, or woman, has only been there 9 months. So I don't really expect them to have signed anything into law yet, but I think it's perfectly valid if they've moved something through the legislature, because he needs to reassure people. People are in shock and they're scared. So I think clear communication and reassurance is very critical here. And then saying what I'm going to do about it. I'm going to tighten gun laws. So that's what I came up with.
Okay, did you actually write it down, or are those the ideas that you shared?
We didn't quite get that far. We were still talking.
Maybe I should put like a notice like, you've got to start writing now kind of thing in the next time. Okay, who had room two?
I believe I did. And here's what our incumbent would say. First of all, we grieve with the victims and the families affected by this horrible tragedy. Oh, and by the way, we also chose the shooting. Everyone should feel safe and confident as they go about their daily lives. And this and other incidents prove that safety and confidence is being put at risk all too often. It has become all too common, and for that reason, this office will focus on 3 things. First of all, we're going to focus on the youth of this community. This was a young person who did it, and it tells us that we need to do more in terms of bullying prevention in the schools. We need to provide more counselors in the schools and provide better access to mental health services for our students. And we'll begin on that immediately. Second, we understand that there are certain indicators that will lead to an act like this being taken by those who have been convicted of domestic abuse, frequent drunk driving incidents, or violent misdemeanors. We want to focus on, again, access to mental health services and intervention while those persons are incarcerated to prevent this kind of crime from happening again. And third, we will examine our national laws to see how they can be strengthened. And particularly, we will focus on assuring that the Senate also passes the ban on assault weapons that the House just passed the other day.
You made me feel better. How about the rest of you? Okay, thank you very much. How about room 3?
That was me.
Okay, Jan. Oh, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah, you were already in room 1 unless you chose something different.
No, I was in room 3 and I moved to room 1.
Right, because it emptied out on Jan.
Right, right.
Okay, what room 4?
Oh, room 4. We took a lot of notes and didn't complete our sentences, but the governor is going to go before the people and talk about what the destruction of the water infrastructure. And here she's going to talk about how devastating it is to the community to not have access to clean and safe water. Of course, water is essential. We have immediate and long-term goals. The immediate goal is to get water distributed to the communities. We'll get the National Guard and community groups out there to deal with getting water out to people. Some of the long-term goals are to identify the problem and work through it with our communities, take a holistic approach and ensure that rural and urban communities are going to have access to clean water. We want the whole state to realize it's not going to be easily fixed. It's not going to happen overnight. And that working together with all the community stakeholders, we will solve the problem both short-term and long-term. Nora,
Nice
Sharon,
job.
anything else?
We said we would seek federal support and state support in order to solve the problem because it was so wide-ranging, the resources. And we wanted to make sure that we were inclusive of all the parts of the community and that no one was left out, no one was left behind without water.
Nice job. Nice job. How about room 5?
Okay. Yeah, chose the wildfire scenario. And we took it, since we were talking or started the session, the whole afternoon talking about representative. We're going to speak from the viewpoint of a senator or representative, a congressman from California. Okay. Now, after the preliminary remarks about what's going on and you know the extent of the damage and expressing our condolences to everyone affected by this, we'll get into policy, you know, specific things that the representative or senator will do in their capacity as representing California interests. Okay. It's clear that we will immediately address needs of those affected and displaced by the fires, as well as the needs of the firefighters who have to battle this blaze. My staff is working with them and with the U.S. Forestry Service and from the State Forestry Service to provide the resources that will be needed to fight this fire and to assist everyone who's affected by it. In the longer term, my office, myself, working with state and federal forestry officials to review forest management practices and policies, both at the state and federal level, to see investigate how, whether we can better manage forest management policies and practices will reduce the situation in the future. But the real elephant in the room here is climate change. And we will, with my colleagues, develop and advocate for legislation that will address the issue of climate change, reduce carbon emissions, and take hopefully steps very quickly to mitigate the impact of climate change on our natural resources and our environment.
I would elect every one of you. What a great job you did. And I know that's not easy because I did it myself. That's really, really impressive. And I think the qualities that all of you mentioned before in the leaders that you would like, and there were some consistencies among all of you. Your press release did reflect those qualities to me. So great job, great job. Okay, one more thing to do, and that is some personal reflection. What I'd like you to do is use the Jamboard again and think about what your takeaway is. When you go back to when you started today and where you are right now in terms of your thinking, what is the biggest takeaway that you have? What do you think now that you didn't think before? And there's the link. And that would be Jamboard 4 if you're using the same link. Okay, you can continue if you're still writing, but we are running up against or close to the end of the session. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to thank you so much for all of your efforts today and also over the last couple of days, those of you who've been here. This activity, I hope, will help you make more considered decisions in the upcoming election. I hope also that you'll take the information that this lesson is available to other groups that you might be connected with that you think could benefit from it. And if you do that and you're interested in helping to present, we'll have somebody there with you. And you would never, you never walk alone in this, as I've said before. But I think there are probably places where we could begin to use it right now. Fran?
Is this the last day? I thought we were going.
Tomorrow we work on the student advocate toolkit.
Oh, okay.
So there is one more day.
Cool.
And if you know anybody else who wants to jump in on that, you can still register. So. All right, folks, thank you so much. I hope you have a nice afternoon. Have an extra hour instead of the last 2 days, which were grueling, I know. So thank you very much. I'll see most of you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thank you.